Hi, everyone. Um, Thank you for popping by. So I expect that most of you have watched the film, The Story of Plastic. So I'm here tonight with Chelsea, my coworker,
Hello.
and there she is. And we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about the film and hopefully talk about some solutions and just ideas and feedback of what you guys thought of the film and what you took away from it, that kind of thing. So we'll start off with Chelsea asking me a question. When we signed up to do this screening, we were provided a whole bunch of information, including some questions that are that kind of like go along with the film. So uh, we'll jump into those questions, and then if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. And we can also do we can unmute people and have an actual conversation if you're comfortable with that. But yeah, I would really love to know what you thought of the film, what you got out of it, um, like anything positive or negative, whatever you want to share. So we'll jump into it. We only have about half an hour on here, so we'll make it quick. But we do want to continue the conversation on our social media afterwards. So if there's things that don't get answered, feel free to message us either through Facebook or through Instagram, and we can answer questions there as well. All right, so let's get started.
Okay, so in the film, we saw several, they call them heroes, so people working on all different fronts of this issue. There's people who are working in the petrochemical industry, there's activists, there's people who are doing beach cleanups, people who are doing zero waste. I feel like you'll identify with a few of those roles, but can you speak more about like how you identify with those roles and sort of how the work that you do with the greener future kind of ties in with the film?
Yeah, I think with this whole situation, not even just plastics, but just the whole environmental situation, um, for me, I didn't really intend to be an environmental activist when I was first starting out. And I don't even know if I guess I am one now, but it's not really a title that I ever thought I would give myself. But the reason why I do what I do is because I keep learning more, and it makes me want to be more engaged and learn more and talk to more people. And the more I know, the harder it gets, but I also can't unknow what I've already learned. So I feel like that's what kind of motivates me to keep going, and also helps me connect with others who want to fight this same battle, and can try and stay positive and develop solutions and come together to make things better, because we're the ones that got ourselves into this mess. So there's definitely an opportunity for us to work together to get out of this mess.
Yeah. A big part of the film focused on recycling, and we've been like fed this myth that we can recycle our way out of this problem, and like everything boils down to proper recycling. And of course it is part of the solution, but I think what's been made clear from the film is that it's definitely not the whole solution, right? So can you speak more to that, and maybe speak to like how much recyclable plastic you find on our beaches, and how, I don't know, recycling in Ontario, maybe make it like a local
Yeah.
contextualized way.
So recycling definitely has its challenges, especially when it comes to recycling on a municipal level, because every community has different ways to recycle. Like within their factories, they have different types of equipment. So it means that some communities can recycle more effectively and efficiently than others, and it's not really fair. So where we are, there's quite a few things that can be recycled, but we're not even actually sure if they are being recycled, because a lot of times they get sent somewhere else, or if there's no buyer for a certain type of material, it usually ends up going to the landfill anyways. So there's a lot of misinformation. And I think recycling is just one part of the solution, because some things can easily be recycled, like aluminum, even paper and glass. With plastic, it's a little bit more challenging, especially when you get into the higher numbers of plastic. So number 1 is easily recycled, but once you get up to number 7, it is almost never recycled. So working around those challenges, I think the best course of action is to reduce plastic use when we can. Some things we can't avoid it. And that's just the way that life is going to be. So I think if we really become conscious consumers and think about what we're using on a daily basis, and if there is a sustainable alternative, that's really something important that we can all do. Because I think every time you decide, I'm going to buy this item instead of this plastic item, it really does add up over time. So I think just everyone kind of collectively taking conscious action to really pay attention to what they're buying, and making sure that you're making a good effort at finding alternatives, because there isn't always an alternative out there. But I think if we're looking for them more and more often, they'll pop up.
Totally. Greg just shared in the chat, so I guess they says, hi from SRD in Australia. We've already run one of these Q&A sessions, sharing the story of plastics, Q&A panel calls to action. So I just took a quick look through there, and there's some really great like calls to action in there. If anyone wants to check that out, they can. But speaking of that, like you just spoke to like how we as individuals one way that we can make a difference in this issue is reducing our own waste and trying to make responsible choices and maybe limiting our consumption. But can you speak to like what our governments are doing, maybe like how they're revamping the recycling program, things like that?
Yeah, so it all depends on like what level of government you're looking at. The federal government is looking to put a single-use plastic ban into effect in 2021. So we're hoping that that all goes through and is processed and it actually happens. What that looks like is still kind of on the table, because they haven't really announced what will be included in the ban. So that's at the federal level. When you look at the provincial level, they're a little bit more focused on putting the onus on each individual municipality, because each municipality is different. But that is going to be changing going forward, because as our recycling program changes, our recycling program, what we're hoping is going to happen is that there is going to be more producer responsibility. So the producers are going to have to pay for the recycling to take place, which means that the rules and regulations of recycling is going to change across the province in the years to come. So instead of everyone putting different things in their blue bin, so for example, here where I am, we can't put styrofoam in the recycling, but in other municipalities you can. So hopefully in the next few years, everything gets streamlined by the province, which means that we'll all put the same things in the recycling bin, and it will make it a lot easier. The thing is that it probably means that things are going to be a little bit more limited. So some municipalities right now, they accept styrofoam, but in the future it might mean that no municipalities accept styrofoam because there isn't a buyer for it. It's actually cheaper to produce new styrofoam than it is to recycle it and try and resell it. It just doesn't have enough value. So I can see a lot of changes coming up in the future when it comes to what we actually are able to recycle, especially now that there's a lot of bans on exports and imports when it comes to waste. China doesn't want to take our waste anymore, for good reason. And I think it's important that we take responsibility for our own garbage. And if that means that we have to stop buying things that use styrofoam, then I feel like that's that's a good compromise to make. I don't think it's that difficult of a switch to make, as long as people are educated and given other solutions, right?
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because, like you said, right now it's really confusing. And when we do Love Your Lake and we go from city to city, like the recycling in each place is different. And so we would have to look up the recycling rules for each place. And like the weird catch of that all too is like a lot of that doesn't even end up getting recycled if there's no market for it. So we're putting it in the bin, but it might not end up actually being recycled, right? Like there's this statistic in the film that only 9% of plastic is actually getting recycled. So I think now if we're focusing on the things that are actually like easy to recycle or where it makes sense for us to recycle those items, then that's great. But then we can focus on reducing our consumption of everything else, and that'll make it much easier for consumers to understand that as well, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we have questions. This one comes from Anna. She says, I am wondering what the waste recycling industry will look like after this pandemic is over. I am a waste auditor and I'm very concerned about this market, the way it has been affected and how much waste we have been producing more.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some changes in all of the waste streams going forward, especially when it comes to things like medical waste, like gloves and masks and that sort of thing. Because some things you definitely shouldn't be putting in the recycling or especially if it's contaminated. And I think that's something that we need to address. Wearing proper PPE is necessary. So it's one of those things that we can do our best to get around it. And if you're not a doctor, you can look at using a reusable mask. If you're only going out every once in a while to grocery shop, that's a safe alternative that can be reused. But for the majority of people that are working on the front lines, they just can't use reusable products like that. So I can see how there's going to be an increase in PPE and that being disposed of. But when it comes to everything else, I have seen information related to household garbage increasing, and I can definitely attest to that because for us in our family, we live a zero waste lifestyle for the most part. And since the pandemic started, I've realized that there's certain things that we just can't do. So we used to fill our jars all the time at Bulk Barn, and we can't do that right now. When we go to the grocery store, we can't use our reusable bags, so we have to take the plastic bags. So it's little things that like that really do add up. And it's really unfortunate because we put a lot of time and effort into changing our habits to be more environmentally friendly, and now it feels like all of that kind of got reversed. Obviously, when things get better, we're planning on going back to living a zero waste lifestyle, but it just shows how easily things can change and how much garbage can really pile up in a short amount of time. Because even for us, we were generally producing maybe a grocery bag or so of garbage per month. And we've definitely seen an increase in the amount of waste we've been producing over the last month, just because of the changes in where we can shop and what we can actually buy.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So Sarah says, I agree with Anna. We have to fight the lie that plastic is more hygienic. I've been seeing that a lot lately, and it's a bit.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. Like, I don't think. I think there's lots of alternatives out there to plastic that would do just as well in the circumstances we're in.
Yeah. Sorry, I just lost my spot. Lindsay says, this doc really reinforced how environmental issues are also social justice issues. The point made in the film about our current recycling system collapsing if we didn't have poverty. Yeah, that was a big part of the film.
Yeah. And happy birthday, Lindsay. I know it's your birthday today. So yeah, I think that was really part of the film that really hit home for me, because for me, like, I've been trying to reduce my waste and reduce plastic because I know that it doesn't necessarily have a good impact on the environment or on personal health, but there's a lot of places in the world that aren't as privileged as I am, and they can't avoid plastic, and they can't avoid, just it's happening in their everyday life, and they can't get away from it, and they can't move away. And so for me, I can definitely appreciate the fact that I have choices, and I have privilege, and I can make things happen in my life where it's not the same for everyone else. And I think that really hit home for me when I saw the part about that young woman who has lungs of a smoker, and it's just because she lives near an incinerator. And there's lots of people in the world that are suffering that way, and it's upsetting to see that, because it makes me think, like, what can I do to help them? And it seems like they're so far away. It's so hard to figure out, like, what exactly it is that we can do. But I think by independently like reducing our plastic consumption, that is in turn helping people on the other side of the world. So I think just doing our part and supporting policy whenever we have the chance, and speaking up when you have the chance, I think that's really important. Not everybody is going to go to their local parliament and like protest or write letters or do all of that sort of thing, but if we support the people that do, I think it can make a really big difference.
Yeah, it's so true. I liked the part at the end of the film where the man said that we live in a water world, and he just sort of explained how everything is so connected by the water and how much water there is. And if we're not taking care of the water in one place, it's affecting people across the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is like, if nothing else, this film really showed that this is a global issue, even though like there are definitely localized pockets. Segueing into that, Allison says, for those new on here to it, unless I missed it if you said it already, which we didn't, what is Love Your Lake?
So Love Your Lake is a series of 100 litter cleanups that we do every year along the shores of Lake Ontario. So we start in Niagara-on-the-Lake and go all the way to Kingston. Some of our events are public. Some of them we work with groups like Girl Guides or schools, or with local companies that want to come out and do a team cleanup. So we've been doing this for 5 years now, and we generally pick up about 100,000 pieces of litter each season that we run the program. And it's really interesting, because I think being on the shoreline and actually seeing the garbage, that's when people's eyes really open, because a lot of people don't realize how much waste is actually out there in the lake until they see it with their own eyes. And then they start to make that connection, like, this could have been mine, and maybe I should do something to reduce my waste. It's very eye-opening when you're actually on site and you have people around you that are in the same situation, and you can have good conversations, and it's a really fun program. So this year we have to do it a little bit differently, because we can't have any public events, but we do have something up our sleeves that we'll be announcing shortly to kind of offset all of the commotion of COVID-19 and how it's changed things. But we're still hopeful that we'll be able to spread our message this year and get people involved, and hopefully still have some fun and still pick up some litter and clean up the shoreline too.
Yeah, that was also a thing I noticed about the film. Like, they made a really good point that like cleanups are great, but they're not the whole solution. And for us, I feel like it's amazing that like we picked up more than 1.4 million pieces of litter just around Lake Ontario alone, right? And that's amazing. But what I think is even better is that at each of those cleanups, we're bringing more and more people out to the lake, and we're showing people what exactly is happening, and we're making people realize that this is not like some faraway issue, right? This is like a body of water that a lot of us have like grown up like going for walks along, or like swimming in and going on whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I think is really special about cleanups, is that it brings people together, and it's an amazing learning opportunity that you might not otherwise have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think Yeah, Allison also shared some great resources about sanitizing PPE for reuse. So people can check that out in the chat. Greg says, plastics are a massive wicked problem requiring multiple responses and many answers with a global cooperative to combat the existing glaring imbalances in business as usual. Very true. And then he also posted a link to another Q&A session for this film. So again, you can check that out. Vincent says, I found that this doc included a wide range of subtopics, ocean, landfill, etc. Is there anything you would add to this doc? And if so, could you elaborate?
I was actually surprised by how many different areas they touched on in the film, because when you think of plastic, you generally just think of like the manufacturer and then it gets used and then it's garbage. But I really liked that in the documentary they did touch on, like a wide variety of impacts that the plastic has, not just environmental. So I think that overall, this problem, it's basically linked to everything. So there isn't something that I would necessarily add to the doc, but I think what this documentary does is kind of open the doors to helping people see how everything is connected, because it doesn't even need to show every aspect of how plastic might be damaging our planet. It can leave a little bit to the imagination, but it basically does show that plastic is in everything. Like you can't get away from it at this point. And I think that's part of the bigger picture, is that it's not just plastic that's connected to everything. Everything is connected to everything. And that's something we need to keep in mind when we're working on like environmental campaigns and that sort of thing, is just remembering that if you pull the string over here, something's going to happen over there. And like keeping everything together and in balance is difficult. So it's something that we have to pay attention to so that we can see kind of all the sides of the problem.
Yeah, for sure. Greg says, all big business have many questions to answer. Extended producer responsibility is one significant part. Demanding this is our collective role. That's true. Because the onus has been put on consumers for so long, and of course, like, we can do our part, but we need more people on board, right? We need the people who actually have the power to step up too.
Yeah. And I think when it gets to the point where there's a few large corporations that are basically running the whole world, it makes it that much harder to take them down or to make them accountable. And that's the predicament that we're in now, where it's so hard to fight them because they're so big. But I think now that there's more awareness being raised, we're just at the start here where we can actually make a big difference, and hopefully all of our collective voices will have an impact. And I think maybe even our current situation with this virus going around has certainly impacted the oil and gas industry in ways that they didn't necessarily see coming. So I don't really know what the future it really beholds, because when this film was made, COVID-19 wasn't around. So there might be some changes going forward when it comes to building all of those plants that they were planning on building in the United States. Maybe that's not going to happen, I hope.
Yeah. That's a good point. Allison asks, how long have you been doing Love Your Lake? How many of the 100 Love Your Lake cleanups do you attend?
So this would have been our 5th year going around the lake. And the first year I did all 100 cleanups. And after that, I usually attend at least, I'd say probably 90 of them. There are a few that either Chelsea does, or we have an awesome volunteer. I think is she on here? Tanya. Yeah, Tanya's on here. She does some of them as well. So I try and get to as many as possible. I'm definitely at all of the public ones. And yeah, I think that's why I have the perspective that I do, because going out and doing all of those litter cleanups, like I've seen a lot of litter, and it definitely puts an impact on you.
For sure. Um, so how do you all stay positive and hopeful when you come across people that have zero interest in reducing their waste or improving their habits? I find it so defeating. And that was from Amanda.
I think for me, I just try and focus on like myself and my community and the things that we're doing that I feel are actually making a difference. I know not everybody is going to be on board, and that's with everything. And I think it's kind of important that we're not all the same. Because there's people out there that are really focused on the things that they enjoy in their life, and they're making a difference in their communities. So even if you're not an environmentalist, I definitely don't expect people to get so deeply involved in it as say I am, because this is my job and I do it every day. So I think there's definitely different levels of awareness and different levels that people want to get involved. And I think any ounce of participation is important. And for me, it's with all the negative news and that sort of thing, like it can weigh on you, but I think every time I go out and have a really good conversation with someone or meet someone new that is interested in what a greener future does, it puts a smile on my face and it makes everything better.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Allison asks, is your book Nurdle the Turtle, Lessons in Litter still available online for purchase by the public?
We do still have copies, but they aren't for sale online at the moment. So if anyone is interested in that book, you can send us an email and we can mail out copies.
Yeah, it's info@agreenerfuture.ca, but I think everyone has my email too, so you can just email me. I will send that along. Allison also says, your work is awe-inspiring. P.S. Yes, seeing the beach litter firsthand is eye-opening and really helps each person see more of this connection.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone else has any more questions or comments. That's all we've got in the chat so far.
Yeah, well, I hope all of you enjoyed the film and got something out of it. And I know, like, I really enjoyed it. And for me, it's one of those things where, like, I'm already aware that there's a problem, but even watching that film, which I did watch it twice, I feel like it's reinforcing to see that every once in a while and kind of brush up. And things are always changing, so it's nice to kind of stay on top of what is relevant and what's news, and like new technologies and that kind of thing. So I watch as many documentaries as I can, and I think that really helps me kind of stay in the loop and keep relevant and also stay inspired to keep moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If anyone has any more questions, you can put it in the chat. You can also reach us directly through Instagram is maybe the best way. And we're at A Greener Future. And we'll be posting all sorts of things from Love Your Lake this year, if that is interesting to anyone. Or you can email us at info@agreenerfuture.ca.
Okay, perfect.
Great work, everyone.
Thank you.
If we're able just to pursue the notion of responsible design, that is what SID supports and has for over 30 years. But it really is one of the core issues. That's the idea of, can we produce rubbish? Can we produce toxics? Can we produce things that are life-threatening? Not really. We have to change that model to things that support life on Earth and have longer-term solutions. Otherwise, we're really just continuing with the misinformation ourselves. not an easy solution, but certainly, again, looking at the SRD site, you'll see lots of ideas where they have done well. And there's just one thing from, oh, you can't really see that. Let's see, the Grow 5 expandals made in the US. They're actually a sandal designed to be have 5 different levels, so they can grow each year with the children's feet. They're designed with longevity and all of those things in mind. Just one good example. Sorry for the lighting, but one good idea. These glasses are 100% post-consumer waste shampoo bottles, and the company, which we've got listed online, also formed with that intent. So they wanted to make the best product, zero waste in the manufacturing, and there's a lot of good models there. So thank you very much. Again, great work. Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that's a very relevant point. Like, I think we really have to vote with our dollars and make sure that we're buying things that are going to last, and look for things that work into the circular economy and make things, like make things last and take care of them, and make sure that we're putting our money in the right spots.
For sure. Sorry, there's actually just one more question.
Okay.
So I see a lot of parallels with the plastic industry and the tobacco industry. I wonder if there are lessons we can look to help guide our way of changing this and holding the plastic companies accountable.
Yeah, I think so. For sure, I think so. And I think it just takes time, because smoking used to be something that was prescribed by doctors if you were stressed. So it only takes a certain amount of time before people learn about the consequences and like start to figure things out for themselves. And I think plastic is really no different. We've already learned how like BPA in our bottles can cause issues, and just toxins in general. So I think we're getting to the point where people have had enough, and I think that's when a whole bunch of changes kind of come along. And we can definitely look to how things went in the tobacco industry. There's still a lot of smokers out there, mind you, so maybe it means that we're in this for a while longer before we see any real solutions. But I think the harder we work on it, the further ahead we're going to get.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And I hope you enjoyed this. We will send out the recording as well. If you missed the beginning of it, you'll be able to watch it again. And like Chelsea said, if you have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.